Have you been sneezing every week and every Do you wake up every morning feeling like someone's driving an ice pick through your eyes or in your sinuses? Is every other sentence punctuated by a sneezing fit? Do you feel that your eyes are so swollen and so sticky and so itchy that you would love to figure out a way to claw them out, but you can't and you won't? But it's really tempting. Yeah, we've all been there. And this is a folk remedy slash scientific remedy that may actually help you along the way. So now, if you saw the post on YouTube, my original video was unfortunately corrupted. So this is the retake. And what prompted this video was when I went out last weekend, thought I saw a really fluffy squirrel or maybe a cat run across the road. No, that's not what it was. It was a tumbleweed amalgamation of pollen being blown across the road. So, yeah. When the first thing you're reaching for in the morning, instead of your coffee, is your allergy meds and your nasal spray, yeah, it's a problem. It's a thing. So, how can you help yourself? What can you do so that maybe you're not reaching for the over-the-counter medications? Well, that's what this is about. In case you saw the thumbnail, you probably know it has to do with honey. Very specifically, there's a couple of things here. It has to be raw honey and it has to be local honey. Yeah, that's right. It's got to be local and raw. Now, why is that? Okay, so raw honey is not pasteurized like the clear honey that we see in the store. It is, according to the FDA, exactly as it would exist in the hive. It still has bits of pollen in it and impurities, and that's why it has to be raw honey. So follow me, if you will, down this odd little scientific rabbit hole, or maybe pseudoscience, I don't know. Anyway, so you know how if you have pet allergies and you're not allergic to your own pet or maybe your parents' pet, well, it's because you're around that dander and that fur every day, especially if it's yours. So because of that, you have built up an immunity to that specific animal. Now, in ancient Egypt, we also know that the pharaohs would ingest small amounts of different types of poisons for the exact same reason. They built up an immunity should someone try to poison them. Yeah, please don't do that. Yeah, please don't do that. A lot of that long-term poison exposure has its own kind of issues and side effects, and it's just very, very nasty. But the logic is sound in a weird kind of warped way. But yeah, so that's essentially what this is. By introducing local pollen into your body, hopefully, fingers crossed, your immune system won't think it's an invader and go into hyperdrive to try and kill it off, which is what your allergies essentially are. It's the immune system being tricked into overdrive by thinking the simply kind of innocuous everyday thing is some kind of invading disease. And that's what we want to avoid. So now, this is where I get to turn into Robin Williams' genie from Aladdin. Go, there's a few provisos and a few quid pro quos that we must go over. And the thing is, where to start? All right, so first of all, it's going to depend on your own individual biochemistry. That's going to have a lot to do with how well this will work. Second of all, it's going to depend on what kind of product you can get. How local is local? That's going to be the other thing. The third thing is this is kind of a long haul, long game kind of remedy in the respect that you aren't just going to do this be one and done. You're going to have to do this throughout the season, or if you have exceptionally bad allergies, you might actually want to start before allergy season. So I actually live in New England, so let me give you a little gauge here. So for us, the flowers generally start to bloom. If you have a really warm spring, maybe March, generally on April, and then everything kind of takes off around May. If you end up, where we kind of had this year, we had a slightly warmer spring, so everything just went boom and bloomed, in May, early May, when it was particularly miserable. Then yeah, if you have fall allergies, Yeah, I guess you probably will want to start, in the spring and summer and then go down through this. Now, here's the deal. Because I live in New England, the odds of finding local honey, raw honey, is not very good in May because, simply stating, all of the mom and pop honey, all the mom and pop apiaries, your bee farms, that's what they're called, or all the farms that have beehives have probably been sold out since harvest season last summer. So you're going to have a really hard time unless you plan ahead and go shopping and pick that up. Now, I actually, on Wednesday of last week, from when I filmed this, after I finished work, I did do some research and ran a few errands. And this is what I found. I went to 3 different grocery stores, 2 of which are only in New England, and one of which is quasi-nationwide. I believe the farthest west it went was Oklahoma. And then if you go down through the southeastern United States, the farthest west it went was in Louisiana. The farthest, it did go up into Maine. So granted, for the most part, most grocery stores are going to be pretty regional anyway. They're going to cater to maybe a handful of states that they are in, and it's going to be, essentially regional brands, regional companies, local companies, etc. So the 3 stores I went to are probably a pretty good representation of what you're going to find in your own grocery store. Now, one grocery store actually had honey from the state still. Now here's the deal. It said it was raw honey. It was clear raw honey. It was also kosher. So traditionally with raw honey, it's going to be kind of opaque. It's going to look like it has little bits and particles in it. It's going to be kind of gritty. And from what I understand, it's not as sweet as we equate honey. It might be a little bit, I don't want to say bitter, but just maybe not as sweet, or the taste will be different as it hasn't been pasteurized and cleaned out. So it's got all that stuff in it. Now, I don't know if in order to make it kosher, it is actually pasteurized, but it still says it's raw honey. So I'm not sure, because in other stores I did also see raw honey that was like partially clear with like sediment almost like in a ring down the center. So that's going to be the other thing that's going to kind of affect this, is how raw your honey actually is. Is it like the real deal? Has it been partially pasteurized, or are they saying it's raw honey and it has actually been pasteurized? So that's where the labeling gets a little bit weird. And then there's like whipped honey, which I think is just something completely different. I'm going to go with that for right now, because I didn't look up whipped honey because it didn't seem important at the time. But now that's something that to bear in mind. Now, there was one store that had local honey. The next geographically closest I could get was Vermont. After that, it's a little bit of a crapshoot between Canada and North Carolina. And to be brutally honest, probably the Canadian honey would be closer to the plant life that's here in New England rather than North Carolina. So that's the thing you're going to have to really pay attention to. You're going to have to sit and look through labels when you go to pick this up. You're going to probably look a little weird, but that's okay. Because if you are watching this channel, the odds are good that you march to the beat of your own drum to begin with. So join the club. Ironically, on the Canadian honey, I did not check and see what province it came from. I don't know if it listed it, so hopefully for our Canadian viewers, your labeling is a little clearer, and that it will help you to distinguish what province it comes from for you, so you can determine how local is local for you. But this is also really good for those of you that live on the northern border and can figure out, where your honey is from. If it's Canadian and it's close to you, great. Or if you're Canadian and it's from the US and it's from a state that's not far, then hey, that works out great for you too. But I sailed through this the first time, and now that I have to redo this, I'm trying to remember. everything that there was because there was a lot in this video. So just bear in mind that this will not replace your allergy medication. I know you might want it to, but it's not. This will just I don't know if this will ever really help you to replace it, because even if you stock up now, there's no guarantee that if you should run out, you're going to find the same stuff. And that is also very important to bear in mind, that you're going to have to stock up ahead of time. Now, here's the other thing. If you go to a mom and pop apiary or farm, harvest time is somewhere between late July and maybe September, like early September. So you're going to have to be on it, and you're going to have to do a little legwork to see what's near you, because it's going to sell out really fast. Because a lot of people do like to support their small businesses. They like to support their local farms. And depending on the size of the farm and where you are, they may not have the beehives to produce honey all year round. So you're looking at a very small window to buy this from. So that's the other thing, is you're going to have to really do your own legwork. If you live in a warmer state where the bees have been active longer, or are active almost all year round, or for the better part of a year, then you have a better chance of finding this maybe year round, for the simple reason being there's honey production and the bees are active. So up here, our season is relatively short, so figure April, maybe May to October. So, and then they don't want to short the bees food for the winter, so you got to leave some for them as well. So that is something else to bear in mind, that your location and the region in which you live will influence how often and how much you can find. Trying to think of what else. I actually didn't have notes for this one. This one I did all off the top of my head. So the other thing is too, is you will still need your allergy medication for things like mold, pet dander, smoke, dust, whatever other allergies you might have. This is only for your plant allergies, so your trees, plants, grasses, flowers, etc. And now, how much do you take? I'm going to leave that up to you. That's going to be up your call. You can start with maybe like a teaspoon or a heaping teaspoon and work your way up to a tablespoon, and see how well that works. It might vary. You might want to take a little more during the peak allergy season. If you're someone that requires injections, you're still probably going to want to get those, because again, there is no guarantee on how well this remedy will work, but it maybe will give your shots a chance to last longer. Maybe you can hold out a little longer before you go and get them. When the pollen count is low or maybe moderately high, you will not experience such severe symptoms as you would otherwise. So it's a very individualistic thing. So there is no guarantee of how well this will work, and it's going to be a really big swinging scale as to how it works on an individual basis. So, and then like I mentioned before, there's a lot of variables that will go into how well this will work for you when. And one of the big factors is how local is local, and also where you live and how often can you get your hands on this. But so, odd little side note, should you be interested in beekeeping, you can always look into that, so you can have a hefty little side hustle and have some honey for yourself. The only thing I would recommend is just double check your local town ordinance. Generally, I know for like chickens, I think you need like an acre, maybe an acre and a half, at least here I think you do. So you may want to just double check that there's no size limit for the lot that you have to have, or how much land you have to have in order to have bees. Also, if you or a very dear friend or any of your family members have bee allergies, beekeeping may not be the hobby for you. Just gonna throw that out there and have that be really really massive thanks Captain Obvious moment, but I felt it needed saying. So hopefully you will find something about this useful. Hopefully if you try this, it will work for you. I know I tried doing it, and I kind of started to realize that you need to have a stash of this stuff in order for it to work. You can try doing it, try mixing the tea in with your honey, or just take it straight up. But its availability is going to be the biggest hurdle you have, I think. And just, finding something that comes from just the region you live, let alone your home state. If you live I did notice there were a lot from Texas, Colorado. There were some really big farms that, produced a lot of honey. There are some that are US and Canadian blends. A lot of them are clarified honey, or they're pasteurized honey. So it's not really what you need, which is the other thing, because I think in order to sell over state lines, they may have to be pasteurized, which is, fun fact, kind of funny, because honey is actually the only food that doesn't go bad and is a natural antibiotic. And if I can find the article, I'd kind of like to do a video on the antibacterial properties of mead, which is actually a honeyed wine. So yeah, fermented honey will give you mead, and if you let raw honey sit long enough, I don't know if you'd be letting it sit for that long, but it has naturally occurring yeast, so the honey in and of itself may ferment, which I find kind of funny. And somewhere the Vikings and Renaissance fair goers of the world are celebrating at this fact. But yeah, so fun little fact there. I hope I can find that article, because it was interesting, because it's the antibacterial properties of mead, and that it can be used just as a preventative. So, but that is neither here nor there, because this is about honey. So on that note, I wish you the very best. I hope you are doing well. Take care, and until we meet again, bye.